All right, everyone. The New York Times decided to beg the question, when is speech violence, they ask, because your brain interprets like a very vague, sort of threatening posturing in a verbal sense to be like potential violence, and it screws with your neurotransmitters and fucks you up, and it can cause stress, and it can cause other problems. So obviously, again, begging the question of, oh, should we censor, offensive or harmful speech? Because, fuck the First Amendment, because that only applies to the New York Times, apparently. I'll answer your question, New York Times, since you appear to be confused about the Constitution, confused about the First Amendment, and confused about the very principle of liberty. Speech is not violence unless it is paired explicitly with violent acts or a credible threat of violence. So if you go online and you tell somebody in specific, you're not talking about, oh, well, I hate X group. I hate this group of people. I wish that all of this group of people would suffer. I wish that I punch this politician in the face. Those aren't credible threats. It's just sort of wondering aloud about the situation. Or if you threatened somebody by saying, well, I'm going to buy 1,000 pounds of fireworks, put them on a rocket, fire it into orbit it around the Earth 3 times, and then bring it crashing down onto your property and just obliterate it. Not a credible threat of violence. The most anybody's going to do is say, well, you're a little bit nuts if you actually think that's going to work. Chances are the person's probably not being literal. Probably just being hyperbolic and mouthing off a little bit. If, though, you specifically target a person, if you say, I'm going to rob your business, I am going to punch you in the neck, I am going to come to your house and stick a knife in your buttocks or something like that, yeah, that would be a credible threat. And 99% of the time, because someone's talking out their ass when they make even a potentially credible threat, nothing's done and nobody cares because it's just called big talk. Now, yeah, you could, in theory, bring a charge against him, at least get him investigated, but who fucking cares? It's the internet. How many times have you heard a story, oh, these two people had an argument online despite being at distance from one another? Not two people argued online, like on Facebook, and they knew each other in real life. I mean, two people who don't know each other, maybe they live 1,000 miles apart, maybe even in different countries, and one of them comes and kills the other or beats him up or something. It's very, very rare. That's because most of the shit-talking you hear online is total hyperbole. Even most credible threats, per se, are hyperbolic in nature. They lead to an investigation. It's determined the person didn't have the means. They didn't have a weapon. No, they didn't have, they didn't have the 1,000 pounds of fireworks to put into orbit. So nothing's done. They get a warning. It's basically, shut the fuck up. You're being an idiot. You're going to get yourself thrown in prison. You should cut this out. Something like that. The New York Times, above all else, desperately wishes, among all of the legacy media groups, CNN, Fox, Breitbart, Drudge, you think they're any different? They desperately want those who are outside of their master's degree in journalism crowd, their pundit crowd, their capped teeth and tuxedo crowd, to be stymied in their ability to dispense information. Because all of these groups have one thing in common. That's that they are stymied from distributing information if it's objectionable in nature. If it's something that people would generally find out there, or maybe potentially a little bit threatening or grotesque or something, a lot of the time they can't even talk about it. You think you can put that in a newspaper, get away with it? No, you're never going to get away with it. Expectations, it's multifaceted. I've already spoken about the fact that, well, if you're talking about like cable news or radio or something, it is directly censored. The FCC says you can't say fuck, you'll get fined if you do. You can't talk about certain issues, you have to be careful of slander and stuff like that. But then there's also the public component. The people of the public in the West. They expect some pundit or some news columnist or something to be very respectful, kind of dry and academic in nature. Like, even if the FCC weren't in their way, if they just started dropping F-bombs or something, these people would say, well, what are you doing here? This isn't what you're getting paid for. This is just a bunch of bullcrap at this point. But on the internet, it's different. Like, I sit here and I swear, or I talk about things that, you know, people would find a little bit more edgy than what the Daily News talks about. Nobody cares. I'm on the internet. I'm not on cable news. I'm not on the radio. So Molyneux can sit there and browbeat someone. Nobody cares. Sargon can shitpost on Twitter. Nobody cares. Tara McCarthy can talk about race. Nobody really cares. Because it's the internet. It was designed differently. It's totally democratized. So the fact that somebody happens to have risen above the crowd in terms of their total audience retention, it doesn't really matter. There's no extra, there's really, even PewDiePie. I'll use a great example instead of trying to explain my way through it. PewDiePie is a totally tame PG-13 sort of figure. He's not edgy, he's not specifically political, he did gaming and a bunch of totally random videos where he does crazy shit. And yet if PewDiePie sits there and says, fuck, nobody cares. They don't care. If he goes R-rated for a moment, I mean, at this point he's probably off of AdSense and 99% of his content, so he doesn't even care anymore. So now he talks about the wage gap or something like that. The legacy media has helped, by the way. Here's something that's important to know. The old guard sort of entertainment industry with its very bland, boring, formulaic, impersonal, unconnected approach is about the same for like PewDiePie or JonTron as the cable news and you know, the legacy radio and newsprint groups are to people like myself. That is, their direct attempts to cheapen or stop the internet as a massive juggernaut of information and entertainment, oftentimes intertwined, is what is causing people to lash out at them. The fact that they're losing in the endeavor, they're losing badly against the internet, is quite clear. The internet's far larger than any of their groups. It's far more likely to solidify itself against any attempt to destroy it. It is far less censored, and so they're at a huge disadvantage. They're bringing a penknife to a machine gun fight, and they don't even realize it. They think that all their money will help them. It's not going to help you. These tech firms that have democratized largely the internet, the YouTubes and Twitters, aren't working with you directly. Because even your streaming service giving them money to have a presence on their platforms is still small potatoes compared to all of their advertisers and especially to the actual user bases. By the way, I think YouTube's doing an update pretty soon. It looks a little bit like a YouTube mated with Windows 10. It actually looked pretty good, but I reverted back to the classic look. I'll just wait until they make it mandatory. Just a heads up for anyone who's not aware, they are doing apparently some sort of test right now of a new design. It is functional though. It's not like Cosmic Panda, so don't worry too much about it. It's still got the same basic functions. Just looks a little bit different. A little more robotic, a little more cloud-like or something like that. Seems to be the way a lot of these firms are going. Less standalone, more interconnected. It is okay. It's fine. It's just like Cosmic Panda was basically PC YouTube, and then they moved to like fusion with mobile YouTube on the modern layout that they have now. But the New York Times is insinuating that simply being objectionable, simply saying things that are unpopular, maybe bigoted or something, that rises to the same level as violence, and that we need to stop this stuff. No, we don't. No, we don't need to stop it at all. We need to let it occur, because otherwise you have acts of violence. How is it? I mean, I know the answer, because they're corrupt. But for anybody who doesn't assume that, how else do you explain how they finally come around to like, oh, violent video games probably suppress violence, but potentially hateful speech, that causes violence. It's totally different in the human mind. No, it's not. It's the same basic principle. It's information transfer, and it should be free and open and extremely libertarian in form. If you're going to have an internet with so many people, you want it to be very, very rich in liberty. You want it to have lots and lots of different intercompeting chaotic opinions, because otherwise it turns into cable 2.0, only there will be a sort of essence of darkness there that I think people in the neoliberal movements don't quite understand. They don't quite understand that people will lash out against them even more if they're suppressed. This will come from the left, it'll come from the right, it'll come from everybody else under the sun. I think what they're doing, honestly, is quite dangerous to their well-being. They don't even appear to understand that. They're looking down at hordes and hordes of people who shitpost all day and expecting them to just remain silent as they continue to push their line of, we need like internet censorship and more internet controls. No, we don't. We don't need any censorship on the internet. The internet's been just fine, thank you very much, for a very long time now. The fact that it's draining away your money because you can't compete with people who can actually speak freely, that's your fucking problem. I've got an idea for the New York Times. Abandon newsprint, abandon your presence in the old guard media, shift to being totally online, and then unmuzzle yourselves and take part in the same sort of internet ventures that everybody else is. There will be people who will still, they'd be fine with paying a monthly subscription to get your online newsletter instead. Why are you dealing with the licensing fees that, you know, to some town, New York Times comes in, oh yeah, we're gonna, you know, distribute in this town, but then they run afoul of some ordinance against obscenity or some bullshit like that because the government's involved, or the FCC's involved with the cable news or something. Why does Fox even bother to have its current setup? They should dissolve their cable show. They should say, fuck it. We're not going to be on cable. All you people, you need to learn how to use the internet. I know your average age is 69, so some of you are a little bit behind the curve, but you need to move online because that's all we're doing now. We're going to stream online. And by the way, the FCC won't be able to tell us, once we're there, that we can't say fuck. The FCC won't be able to tell us bullcrap, and will always oppose any censorship from the government. These corporate firms, they don't even realize that by lowering their overhead, they would make more money online anyway. They could go full 1776 mode, and it would basically cripple any desire among the groups that can't move online to censor the internet because they'd have too many adversaries. Right now, it's private users and the alt media, or at least most of it, against the old guard media. What would happen if a bunch of old guard media figures decided to move online? I know Bill O'Reilly already has. Glenn Beck already has, and they're averse to the concept of like government censorship online, which is to their credit. And these are a couple of totalitarian evangelocons. They're weirdos, and they get it. They get it too. Now that they're not being paid by some corporation, now they understand. Now they understand what it's like to get screwed by the expectation that everyone will be absolutely squeaky clean, baby clean at all times on cable or a newsprint or something like that. You can't say anything objectionable. You can't say anything fringe. You can't say anything just a little bit out there or you get kicked off. That's the way these corporations work. It's not the way it works online. Good. It's a wonderful thing. When is speech violence? Oh, I don't know. Do your words actually cause physical harm to another person? If you're inciting violence, yeah, that would be illegal, quite clearly. Making a credible threat, yeah, it's credible. You can get prosecuted for that. If you're saying, hey, I'm going to kill you while you're killing someone, yeah, it's a crime, but that's because of the act. There has to be an act paired with the speech, and it has to be on the explicit side. It can't just be, well, I hate this group of people, and then some other person hauls off, attacks somebody from that group, so somehow you're responsible. No, you're simply giving your opinion. Other people took it further than that. It's their fault. The one performing the act is solely responsible unless they have been specifically egged on by another person to do that. Someone has commanded or suggested violence in an explicit manner. Otherwise, no, speech isn't violence. I would say the New York Times making excuses for warmongering and helping cause the deaths of tens of thousands of civilians via fucking Obama's drone program, and now making excuses for what's now basically Mattis' drone program. I would say that's a little bit more harmful than somebody saying, oh, well, I don't like this group of people. Like they're homophobic. So they say, well, I hate these sodomites. It's just speech. If somebody else is attacking gay people, that's their fucking problem. They're not speaking. They're acting. There's a difference. The New York Times doesn't get this. They want everything to be squeaky clean. They want it to be PC and like G-rated like they have to be. Screw off. Don't be on the internet then. You're going to get like trolled and it'll hurt your feelings. Boo-hoo-hoo. You just had to fire half of your copy editors. Why'd you have to do that? Does a business that is doing well, like the New York Times keeps claiming, oh yeah, we've got great circulation, our numbers are rising. but we had to fire hundreds of people. Does that seem normal to you? No, I think they're desperate. I think they're clinging to relevance, and they're cooking the books a little bit on how many copies they're actually selling, how many people are fucking visiting their website for a purpose other than trolling them. I think probably half the people that use the New York Times website at this point are just trolling. Good. They probably deserve it. That's about all. Peace out.